Hello, and welcome to Beats and Beyond podcast with me, your host, Laughlin Meagher, or DJ Boomtown. Meet Ben Howells, a music community builder with over 15 years producing events on the West Coast. He's the driving force behind the success of Pachena Bay Music Festival, Cumberland Wild, Atmosphere Gathering Festival, and several other music-driven events. In 2020, Ben incorporated long shot events and solidifying his position as a leading event production company in the mid to North Vancouver Island region. As Mount Elia, his multi-genre DJ performances weave together the world's most passionate cultural music with infectious underground electronica, working with audiences from around the globe. Artists like Beats Antique, Dub Effects, The Cat Empire, and many more have shared the stage with him. Based in Port Alberni, Ben's commitment to the Central and North Vancouver Island area is evident as he actively engages with his communities, fostering gatherings that create strong bonds and inspire positive action. With a keen ear for his audience, Ben ensures a memorable experience, always ready to join them on the dance floor. Join us on this podcast episode as we delve into the journey of Ben Howells and his contributions to the vibrant West Coast music scene. Hello, Ben. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks. That was I don't know if I've heard anyone read it out loud from beginning to end there. That was nice. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, man, you've been up to a lot. Let's start with Pachena Bay Music Festival. What year are you in? How did it go? Tell us about the site.
Yeah, for sure. So it's into its second year. Pachena Bay is on the Huayet modern, traditional and modern lands of Huayet First Nation. And Pachena Bay is a beautiful little campground on the West Coast, about 7 kilometers from Bamfield, just tucked in with the village of Anakla there. And yeah, we finished our second year. It was a pretty great success. We're still finishing up some odds and ends and doing some final meetings and debriefs with campground staff and the Huayet Group of Businesses, which is a corporation that manages a lot of Huayet's various businesses. And yeah, just kind of finishing up with some of the final touches. And yeah, all in all, I think it went quite well.
Great. That's really good to hear. I had some friends who went and I got some pretty rave reviews, not to be too punny there. But tell me more about the festival in terms of, now, is it mostly electronic music or is there live music? Is it a combination of the two, one stage, two stages? Tell me a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's located right on this beautiful beach in Pachena Bay there among ancient spruce and fir trees. Yeah, we have 2 small daytime beach stages that face west, overlooking the beautiful sandy beach. And then we have one sort of evening stage, main stage, that is positioned sort of at the end of the campground road. Yeah, it's a mixture of, it's mostly dance centric, I would call it. But that doesn't necessarily imply all electronic. We have a lot of bands that are also involved. All of Sunday was mostly all live music. But many of the bands are more the type of band you would dance to, something in the funk or reggae. We had an amazing swing blues type band called Blue Moon Marquee that closed off Sunday night. So being out there on the West Coast, we want to make sure to try to build and create an event that's going to be something that everyone can enjoy, both the audience that frequents the various events that myself and many collaborators have done over the years, but also people from the local area. So we wanted to try to make sure we had a nice mix of music. The amplification also shuts down early. We do this a lot with our events as partly a harm reduction aspect, and also as a respect thing for the community of Anakla that lives nearby. So we do have all night dancing that takes place, but after around 1:30 at night, people put on wireless headsets to if they want to carry on with the dancing throughout the night. It's a great campsite, on-site camping. With you're out there quite far, but you still have flush toilets and certain amenities that are nice to have when you're out there. It's a family-friendly event. Out of the approximate 800 people that were there this year, we had about 90 children. So a pretty strong family component, even though you are out there and there is a ruggedness to it. I think it was really special to have so many families feel good and comfortable about coming that far out to an event that we're doing, and that it would be a place that they would feel safe to bring their children.
That's great. I brought my son out there, I guess before my daughter was born, and he unfortunately got sick. He ended up running a fever, and we had to leave the campsite a couple days early. But I've also been out there. Used to be part of Otherworld, which is the local Burning Man crew of folks, and we did an Otherworld out at Pachena Bay, and it's a beautiful, beautiful site. And I think we cultivated a pretty good relationship with all the First Nations there, and I ended up actually hanging out with the chief at the time one night, and we had a really good time. Actually, he seemed like he was pretty chill. He was pretty like he wanted to be part of it, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's I grew up on Cortez Island, and in the last shortly before the pandemic kind of went down, my wife and I had bought a house here in Port Alberni, and being from a small place, it's pretty important to myself and a lot of the people that I work with that we are genuinely taking the time to understand as much as we can, and to try to make the event something that everyone can be proud of. I used to do an event over on Cortez many years ago called Carrington Bay, and I do Cumberland Wild and Pachena Bay, and it occurred to me I don't know, a month ago or so that 3 of my main cherished events that I've done are actually named like the place they're located, because like
Right.
where it is important, and like who's there. Both obviously the First Nation who have been there for thousands and thousands of years, but also local Banfield people and just people from the small town who have decided to live in this beautiful place at the end of the road. And there's a marine center there, and there's an emphasis on it's a marine park there. There's a lot of emphasis on education out there in that area. The people out there are really smart and beautiful people, who have a lot of knowledge of how to live in Banfield, in Anakla. And there's a lot to be learned and absorbed from that area, and a lot to be honored. I'm just pretty grateful that we managed to be there at the right time and start to kind of set some festival roots into the place there, and hopefully incorporating more and more local artists and whatnot into the fold, and hopefully it can continue to be something that everyone can be excited for and proud of.
Nice. So you're gonna do it in 2024?
Yeah, we have plans for 2024. We haven't got 100% on what date, but we are confirmed to do 2024. Still, like I was saying, there's still some meetings and some debriefs to do, and of course the wishes of chief and council and the resource minister and lots of the power players in the fold there have the power to choose what they want. So of course we're always at the that's always there for us. So we're always working to make those communications as much as we can.
Right. Now, when I sent you the little, I guess, the form to fill out, you mentioned this idea or concept of the festival as an organism. I'm really curious about that. What do you mean by that? Tell me a bit more.
I guess like, at night when the event is taking place and things are crazy and people are dancing and maybe some people are more intoxicated than others or less intoxicated, there's a level of consciousness that the collective group has. And as an event progresses throughout a weekend, there's sort of a perceived collective consciousness that group of people end up kind of emulating a certain energy that is, that I will perceive as an organism, as, the group. It's the group. And that organism behaves for different reasons at different times, for different reasons, depending on how we've built the event. So certain things are in place, like different harm reduction measures to ensure that that organism is not off balance for too long. We shut the music down on Sunday early, and we try not to have much activity, and we try to encourage people to sleep on Sunday so that they get a nice, safe ride home on Monday. And that's part of the structure that we create to help structure that organism to remain in balance as much as possible. We also do events because we want people to join together. We want people to collaborate. We want people to find community and we want people to feel free and to release anxieties and social pressures. We don't want to bring a lot of the social pressures that are always there that build up in us. And sometimes when people are given a level of freedom, they sometimes take that freedom and go a bit too far with it. They might abuse themselves a bit more than they should, or ingest more substances than they should or shouldn't. And sometimes if that event is really, there's a lot of energy that needs to be released on the Friday, sometimes that organism might become more discombobulated at night. And in that moment, we all kind of have a choice to kind of be, what kind of cell do we want to be in the body? Do we want to be this confused one that's causing more, or do we want to be that white blood cell that's finding where the pain is, or finding where the body needs to heal? And those white blood cells are like the people picking up the trash, or the people who are looking out for the ones around them. And sometimes that organism may become more chaotic or imbalanced than it should, causing maybe more litter or more of something but then in the end, the organism has a structure where it can come back around in the early morning when the zombies start to go to sleep and the kids wake up and the parent, and the fresh energy comes, and then it's, maybe someone might have gone too far the night before, but then there's someone in the morning that can sort of balance that out and help to sort of bring that energy back around. And so the perception of the event as an organism is kind of like how that collective energy sort of plays out throughout the weekend, and who plays what role. And sometimes I'll have folks that are so excited about, stoked about it, and they want to help and they want to take part, and they're not a volunteer, they're just an attendee, and say, hey, Ben, how can I want to help? Like, I appreciate this. This is so great. What can I do? You say, well, when it's Saturday night and like the fancy headliner DJ is playing and everything seems perfect, and you look around and everyone's giving her and it's just so great and the vibe is so high and you're feeling all of that love, stop. Take a second. Feel your feet against the ground. Remove yourself from the bliss. Go to the edges of the event. Be where you need to be when you need to be there. Use the force, like be that person that helps that person, like be in the right place at the right time. How do you do that? You center yourself, you remove yourself from that collective for a moment, like turn into that white blood cell that's cruising through the organism, like helping to make it a different, a way that's less discombobulated or more balanced or something of that nature. And then looking at everything we do through that lens, and what can we do structurally? What can we do with communication? What can we do with who we are, with the size that we let the event get to? All of the things play into how that organism behaves.
Yeah.
So
well,
I think
harm reduction is so important. And we always used to have, back when I used to help out with Entheos gathering, and then we used to do Earth Dance in Victoria, and And we used to throw a lot of shows in Victoria, and sometimes there'd be 5 or 6 people at the event that were just, we used to call them vibe keepers, and it was like they stayed sober. They were at the back, like you say, at the back of the room, watching people, watching how people interact, making sure nobody was being inappropriate, and nobody was going over, any realms of consent or anything like that. And then, yeah, watching out for people that, some people just lose themselves in the night and do take too much of whatever, whether it's alcohol or drugs. And it's such an important role at any major event, but even at a small party, it's a very important role to always have somebody who's just kind of holding that space for the people that maybe can't hold space for themselves in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. It's hugely important. There's no doubt there. And part of that is also part of not being steamrolled as an event producer. Also, and for myself over the years now, my demographic has aged with me, so maybe it's a little bit unique in that regard. And my smaller, I'm more isolated, but like dedicated sort of network of people. And they've aged with me. But one thing I learned is like when you're onboarding, when the next generations are starting to sort of take power, like that like they're starting to take power of the dance floor. I mean, like that, like 20 to 28, that like age category that is really starting to sort of be that. The onboarding is so important, like the acceptance of the older guard, accepting of the younger guard, the younger audience, the younger sort of leaders, new leaders coming in, and accepting that they're going to do it differently or make some of the same mistakes, and allow those mistakes to take place, because
Right.
you can't try to you can't teach everything to everyone. Like you have to let people make their own mistakes. And if you don't let that process happen gradually, then sometimes it can steamroll you. Like you end up having an event that becomes too popular with a demographic that hasn't been onboarded or sort of properly vetted over a couple year period. And I've definitely noticed a little bit of a difficulty with the pandemic gap. And normally you'll have like a nice flow of like people in their later adult life who are starting to drop off of the nighttime bar, and then there's a younger audience that's starting to kind of come into the nightlife and the club scene. And when you just it's a difficult thing onboarding the next generation, and when it comes, it can come in a big burst, and
Right.
and that can cause some difficulties. Again, the communication ahead of time, that's all structural stuff for the organism in terms of like trying to get that
Right.
message across beforehand.
Yeah. No, I'm seeing that with my club night here on Salt Spring. I play every Friday at Moby's, and it's funny. It's totally a younger crowd that of people that I don't really know that well. And most of people my age, and I'm assuming your age, we're probably around the same age, don't go out as much. And it's like me, I'm addicted to the music, so I can't stop. I won't stop. And that's just sort of who I am and how I am. And it's been interesting because I've kind of had to change my style a little bit, get like my style's got to be a little bit more, I guess, like, I don't know, I don't want to say top 40, but definitely flirting
A
with
little
the edges.
dirtier.
Yeah, a little dirtier, flirting with the edges of kind of harder, more modern music that I'm just like, wow, okay, that's okay. It's like, I just never really thought I'd find myself playing bass house, but it's like, some of it's fucking great. Like, it's really good music. Some
Yeah,
of it, I'm like, wow, there's some,
yeah,
like, in every genre, there's tons of hidden gems. It's so
of
funny when you talk.
course. And
Yeah,
there's
Yeah,
almost
go
like
ahead.
a rotation of talent that flows through every genre at different times, and it'll hit certain genres and push certain genres forward really great. And by the way, I've enjoyed lots of your sets over the years. I mean, you've always been a phenomenal performer and musician, and I appreciate you on a big level that way as well.
Oh,
I wish I
thanks,
had
man. I
said it
appreciate
sooner,
it.
but yeah.
Cheers, man. I really appreciate that. Well, I'll hopefully I'll be able to bring you out to Moby's one time, and maybe you bring me your way one time, and we can work that out. But it'd be super fun. I got a band, believe it or not. I have a band right now, and we're getting ready
Nice.
to release our first EP in October, I believe.
Killer. No,
So,
I'm looking forward to hearing it, man.
but yeah, just a little bit more on that organism. It's like the way that I kind of relate to that organism. I mean, I guess as mostly been a performer more than an organizer, but I've done a bit of both. And as a performer, there's this total symbiotic relationship between the energy that a musician or DJ puts out and into the audience, and then what you get back. And it's it's a total symbiotic relationship, and it's just like it can be building up, it can be building down, it can be going in all these kind of directions and dimensions, but it really, you really got to connect and pay attention to each other in a way to make that, so that group vibe you're talking about, like,
Mm.
have those peak experiences, but also maybe have, especially since the pandemic, I've been noticing, for my real personal taste in music, there's been a lot more emotional tracks that I want to play, that just like the kind of, we lost the scene for 2 years, and it still feels a little tender, people dancing and connecting, and without that fear of getting sick. And it's better now than it was last year, but when I
I
first
felt it. I
started my
felt it a lot more last year for sure, and I felt it a bit this year. But there's a few structural things we started doing to kind of help to honor the more introverted and or less germ or more germ sensitive people, because all pandemic rhetoric aside, there was definitely a culture of people before the pandemic who didn't like to be spat on by drunk people in the middle of the night talking in
yeah,
their face, and
well,
weren't
I don't
really
like that.
that great, weren't stoked on people shoving their fingers in their mouth on the dance floor. Like, I think now there's a lot of people who in no way were necessarily like caught up in the pandemic rhetoric, but are now feeling a little bit more like it's a little more socially acceptable to be like, you know what, I actually don't want to share this joint with you, or actually, no, I'm not doing this. And some of those people may not have been at all changed by the pandemic. They're just, that's who they were beforehand. It just was a little bit
Yeah,
more socially weird to say that in our particular culture of hug. We have a very hug heavy culture, where
yeah,
a hug is almost socially expected, and that maybe some more introverted people, which I'm not, I'm a hugger, but maybe more introverted people feel a little more emboldened now to be a little more true to themselves in terms of communicating that to other people. And I think that's a little interesting little side note that sociologically has taken place a little bit. And I think that's totally fine as well.
yeah.
One thing we've started doing is plugging our silent disco headset transmitter in during the amplified music, because there are some. I have been approached by a handful of people, and fellow that does a 420 dance jam thing in Comox Valley here. They do a lot of silent disco stuff. Made a really good point to me about some people like to be really in the music, but they don't want to be in the middle of the crowd, in the sweet spot where the speakers are good, where it's the most busy getting bumped. And
Right.
some women who are really, really into dancing and not into being approached by people say if they put the headsets on, men don't come up and talk to them as much, or people don't come up and interrupt them when they're dancing as much, and they can find a little bit more private time within the crowd, which I thought was also an interesting little psychological side thing, that plays into trying to help to make a space comfortable for a variety of types of people.
Yeah, well, it's pretty interesting. The first time I saw like an LED wearable thing was like I stumbled into like a singles night, and they had these bracelets, and you could switch the colors on the bracelets to like it was like three or four different colors. I wasn't single. I just stumbled into it. It was happening at Moby's, and you could switch the color to like yes, I want to be like it was kind of like yes, I want to be approached. No, I don't want to be approached. Just looking to make friends. You know, like it was like three or four different messages, and everybody who was wearing the bracelets kind of like could navigate that. So it's interesting to me that the headphones would kind of
Similar. So that's it. If both headphones are on, then I don't want to be interrupted. If one is off, okay, I can be approached and communicated with, but I may just turn the headset on at any time and go back to the music. And then headset around the neck is like, let's party, let's talk, whatever, let's have a beer or whatever, right? And yeah, just little subtle social things to help people navigate the social world we live in. Yeah,
that's
I think
great.
it's a fine thing.
It's funny, you know, as like I don't know, I don't know if I want to. I'm just like I'm addicted to bass, and so when it first started happening, the disco heads, I was just like, I was such like a jaded old, you know, bass hound, and
Honestly, I shouldn't
I was
say it.
like, yeah, I was like, come on, this doesn't work. And then I tried it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so much fun.
It's a funny thing. I still don't really like it, but what I do like is that from a DJ perspective, and some people learn how to figure this one out, is you're really in people's ears. So as a DJ, you can be like, "Hey guys," you can do your radio DJ voice. Like you don't have to do your hype man voice. Like, "Yo, what up?" Like hands in the air. You can really
Yeah,
get into people's ears, and you can talk to people when you're doing the silent DJ disco DJing. And there's definitely some like fun interactive stuff that can be done. But
yeah,
yeah, it's a difficult one because I think most of us want to be rattled by bass, and that's just the bottom line.
yeah. The other part of it that, well, and I don't know if you do this at your events, but I've seen it at other events where it's like multiple channels. There could be like two or three DJs playing at once, same dance floor, two different DJs. So you look out into the crowd and you're like, wow, okay, I'm like, and I've done it from the DJ perspective. I'm like, okay, great, I'm winning. And then you look up again and it's like, I'm not winning. And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm winning. You know, oh, okay, it's all right. Everybody's listening to me. And, you know, so there's this weird, like, competitive thing. And you're just like, okay, you're looking at the other DJ going, yeah, yeah, I got tracks. You got tracks. You know?
So this year for Cumberland Wild, actually is the first year we're not having multiple DJs. We're just
I
having,
think it's a good move.
yeah, we're doing one after the other. We really want every DJ to have the full audience, and really kind of lean into or get away from any of that competitive aspect that might kick in, which is inevitable, to a degree. But one thing is, it's on one hand it's competitive. On the other hand, it's a little bit of a process of letting go of the ego, for two reasons. One, humans are just always like to control stuff. It's like the channel changer. They're just flicking around. It's just scrolling. It's the same thing. Like it's nothing
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and I realized after a while, like, 'cause people were just flicking back and forth the whole time, you know, because they wanted to see what the other guy was doing,
mhm.
and it was fun. And what I thought was cool was like, you know, like you could really tell who was listening to house and who was who was listening to bass music. You know, it's
For
like they,
sure. That actually reminded me of my point. So as performers, as musicians, it's hard, it's obvious, and even people on the dance floor, we assume that the music is moving us. And we know that the music is moving us. And we also know that the people around us are moving us, but we don't realize how much the people around us are moving us. We assume most of us are moving because of the music, but if you go into the middle of a silent disco dance party without your headsets on and you stand in the middle, you can start and you can look, oh, you got the people's feet against the ground. Okay, fair. There's some rhythm there. But if you start to, you can feel the movement of people around you. And it made me realize that like dancing isn't just about the music. It's about the people that are moving around you, and they play a big role in how you move. So silent
Yeah.
disco is also like a letting go of the ego in terms of how much you are actually affecting the room. As a DJ, we know if you can find that person in the dance floor who's got the big movement, who's inspiring people around them, you hook into that influencer, that dance floor influencer, you
Right.
connect with that person and you get them on your side, the side of let's fucking give her and fucking dance our asses off side.
Yeah.
And they are your, those people, they are helping the room, helping the organism in that time giver. And I think silent disco made me realize that we don't just dance to music, we dance to each other as well. So
Wow. That's great.
put that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah. No, that's definitely that's gonna end up in one of the short form content outtakes I do with the show. That's very cool. So let's move on to like what's coming up next in August, right? Is Cumberland Wild. You must be
Cumberland Wild, yeah.
getting
So
amped up
yeah,
for that.
about I think in 2018, I'm not good with remembering numbers. We reorganized our production from Atmosphere Gathering into Cumberland Wild. We wanted to originally with Atmosphere Gathering, we had a site that was not in Cumberland, and we had to retreat into Cumberland last minute to ensure the first Atmosphere Gathering took place. And the couple of years following, we were always kind of looking for another place and never quite got that perfect location. And we decided when we rebranded into Cumberland Wild that we wanted to really lock into something that made good sense for the town. And so we rebranded with the name and turned it into a slightly smaller production, but still with the same similar production values. We just took a circus tent out of the equation. So now we did a couple years pre-pandemic, and now we're a couple years out of the pandemic. Last year was great. We sold out we brought the overall numbers down because we weren't sure what it was going to look like, and then we ended up selling out Saturday last year, and pretty close to sellout on our Sunday event as well. Not quite sold out last year. And yeah, now we're rolling into this year, and yeah, we just finished up with Pachena, so it's like all hands turn around back on deck for Cumberland Wild, and we're just doing our best to finish off some of the last details, get some of the last volunteers locked in, and yeah, keep selling tickets as much as we can.
Nice. So that's August, what is it, 19th
1920.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Saturday, Sunday.
I'm gonna be visiting my wife's aunt on Lasqueti that weekend, and so I apologize. I'm gonna miss it, but I definitely want to make it out next year. I've decided next year is festival year for me and my family. I'm just like I'm just gonna throw the kids in the truck and be like, "Yo, I'm gonna show you what Papa really does." Just, that's my goal next year is gonna be like, okay, let's do this. I got itchy feet, but it's one of those things where the kids are our big responsibility, and so it's like I'm on a different lockdown. It wasn't just the pandemic.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear. Well,
Yeah.
my daughter's
Yeah.
3, and yeah,
Yeah.
so similar time frame, and kind of well timed in a sense because it was lockdown anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's doing good. We had her out at Ska Fest. I'm handing her flyers, and she's dishing out flyers to people on the dance floor. So
That's great.
trying to get her locked into the family business here.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, no, it's great. And Cumberland Wild is another one that same thing. The demographic is also aging with me. Huge family factor there. We've switched it up musically a little bit this year. Normally we have all the electronic and bands kind of mixed together back and forth throughout the days, but this year we kind of foresaw economics being tough and time being tough for people, and we sort of tried to design the event so that people could just come for one of the 3 events. So it's sort of like a concert series more than a festival with 3 distinct events. The Saturday main event from 11 a.m. to 11. Well, it'll be a little later than 11 p.m., but it's throughout the day basically.
Yep.
And that's a mixture of a lot of female forward hip hop acts, and dance music. Mark Farina, the Sponges, who are more in the house tempo, and Manic Focus, who's coming up with a couple musicians and doing a bit of a live fusion thing, and that's more bass heavy. Sort of, he's not from Denver, but kind of that Denver vein of funky bass heavy mid tempo with live instrumentation.
Nice.
And then we roll into the all night silent disco. With we have Joanna Magic and Applecat as two out of town features, and then the rest of the acts are all more or less Comox Valley, Kamba River DJs who are all lots of really great. It seems like the Comox Valley spawns DJs like continuously, so some great local talent there.
Or the world.
Yeah, and then Sunday we're really leaning into Sunday as the live band day, where we have Petunia and the Vipers and Downtown Mischief and Cumbia, Cumberland Cumberlandia, Pastel Blanc, and quite a few great acts on Sunday as well, with a Sunday peace hour, like a gospel sort of thing, with a youth showcase with a bunch of youth talent from Cumberland and whatnot. So yeah, we figured this year, people with time constraints, and we didn't want people to feel like we wanted people to feel like they could just jump in for one of the shows and not need to commit to the full weekend. Certainly a big commitment for a lot of our audience coming all the way out to Pachena. But yeah, we're really proud of the event this year, and we're stoked on ripping it up in downtown Cumberland again.
Yeah, well, I saw one of your acts you have coming at Campbell Bay. I did go to one festival this year, which was nice. Campbell Bay Music Festival, another bay. I saw, and because we were staying with kind of family members of the organizers, so we were on site at one of the houses, but camping in the backyard, and so we ended up staying an extra night just randomly because we were like, yeah, let's just enjoy the bay when it's more quiet. But then they have their volunteer party the next night, and they had Nada play, that all female hip hop group out of Toronto, and I was just like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love what Campbell Bay's doing, and I kind of grew up with all like fiddle music and folk music, and that was kind of like what my family was really into. My grandfather played the fiddle, and I grew up with all that kind of music. I love that music. But man, it was so nice to hear some bass on Sunday night, and Nada, they're really good. Yeah, I was actually trying to figure out a way to get them to Salt Spring, but Salt Spring is just like, it's such a fickle audience to promote to, man. It's like, it's a roll of the dice to do a bigger show here, man. It's sometimes it really hits, and then other times,
yeah. Well, they're maybe they'll make a big splash a little bit at Cumberland Wild, and might trickle over there, and it might help with island plays, and that's something we definitely do in Cumberland, and have done. Sometimes bringing in an act and getting them on the big stage in front of that festival audience really kind of gives people that really true feel of what they're about, and then they'll sell the smaller, more fickle winter rooms more effectively later in the winter, because people have really seen them when they're in that barefoot dancing in the grass, like kind of thing, right?
Yeah. No, they're super talented, and there's actually this pretty awesome female promoter that she kind of has taken over Dance Temple on the island, and she's brought in two big acts, and on a Thursday night, and because she's got such a following with Dance Temple, she sold out Fulford Hall twice in a row, and it's just like, okay, this is amazing. This is like, she's got a community behind her. So I was thinking about talking to her about trying to, because they're around for a bit. I think they're also playing, like they did the Phillips what is it, Phillips Backyard,
yeah,
and Weekender, and I think they're doing Rifflandia as well. So
yeah, I think they are. Yeah.
So they're around for a bit. So I don't know. Maybe I still got time to and get a show out, but it's I don't know. I'm so buried by kids. I don't know. Are you buried by the one kid? I got two kids. It's like, it's awesome.
I don't know. Like you can't get it. You can't get the same kind of stuff done. I mean, my wife also, we both work on our business. So like, and she used to tree plant. So like we have a similar strong work ethic, and we definitely approach our festivals like in the sense that we hire a professional nanny to be there. There's no way we could do it.
Yeah.
And even with her, it is a challenge. They just, you just can't do all the things you used to be able to do as quickly and efficiently. You just have to like plan
Yeah.
for a lot of redundancies and never
Yeah.
getting to where you're going on time.
That's totally it.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice to connect on that level, because that's like, it's my life now. It's amazing. Like, don't being buried under a pile of kids is awesome. It's totally worth it. And you're right. And it's like, oh yeah, everything's kind of turned into like slightly slow game, like, okay, just keep going. When you get the moment, go, do, and then, oh yeah, and then they wake up and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. That's how much time I had.
There it was. Yeah. 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 So yeah, no, things are going great. We're just like starting to, we also, like I work with Cumberland Village Works. We are equal collaborators with Cumberland Wild. And we also co-promote a lot at the Waverly and have done so for a lot of years. And yeah, we're definitely starting to roll out, starting to get some of our fall and winter bookings lined up, and winter's looking pretty good in Cumberland for sure. But as
Nice.
always, it's a moving goalpost, and there's definitely the market's ever shifting and changing, and like we were saying, the demographics and also just the frequency and just the economics. So yeah, we're moving in pretty strong, but we're playing it safe as well, and really trying to stick with things we know will be safe enough, but still trying to bring in fresh stuff and trying to break fresh acts as well. So
Yeah, it's super important. I mean, I think the last time I played at the Waverly, it was just like they were just getting started on the reno. And then I've been through there since the reno's finished, and man, it looks great. Much bigger room, way better sound, and nice bigger stage, and so that was quite some years ago, but well, maybe not. I don't know, 3-4 years ago. I don't know. So I think the last time we came through there was with Ganga Giri, and
yeah.
Yeah, anyways, it was a great show, but I was like, man, can't wait to see what this room looks like. And well, then he had a kid, and then I had a kid, and then pandemic. He's gonna come around.
Yeah.
He's coming around. They're coming here for, I think, his wife's from Victoria, and his wife's birthday coming up, and I think they're gonna be in town in September.
The first time I saw Ganga Giri play was on Diversity Festival on Texada Island, and I can't remember the sequence. It was like 5 Alarm Funk into Ganga Giri into Big Bass Theory.
Oh my God.
And it just was such a good sequence of bands on the Diversity stage, and I just was blown away by those guys. Actually, maybe it was, anyway, I can't remember if that was the exact sequence, but something like that. And point being, when I first saw them there, I was like, wow, that was really, really enjoyed that.
Oh man, we got to play the last Diversity. We didn't know it was going to be the last Diversity, but it's a festival that, is a bit of a bummer, but I kind of get it. It had a lot of tragedy happen at that site, and but man, it was such a beautiful venue and beautiful kind of thing going on
It's
there.
One of the best of all times for sure. Like Carrington Bay, sometimes things just need to be put to bed and just appreciated and loved in our memories, and be allowed to be over. But yeah, it's a tough one. I always sometimes message some of the people who were sort of the key organizers every so often. Hey, maybe one little quick one. No, but no, it is one of those things where we can love it, but yeah, sometimes it is good to just let things be.
Yeah. No, it's just what happens. So you mentioned 20 years of tree planting. Tell me a little bit about that and how that was such a powerful influence on your life.
Went out planting when I was 20, and it just is one of those jobs that fit well for an island kid. A lot of energy, a lot of endurance, can exist out in the woods a bit more than the average kid my age, maybe. I don't know. And yeah, I enjoyed being out there. There's a camaraderie and there's a sort of survival aspect to tree planting and an adventure aspect where you're going from town to town throughout British Columbia or Alberta or wherever, and sort of a fun job that I just kept doing. And in lots of ways, I guess it's its own trap, like anything in life. It can be a blessing and a trap at the same time, depending on the time frame and how all things play out. But it definitely has allowed me to be a part-time event producer for probably 15 of the last 20 years. And really only in the last 5 or 6 years have I really, and even now, still to this day, I still supervise a couple of small contracts out of Port Alberni, and in the spring and in the fall. So I guess I can't say that I'm 100% a professional event producer, but at this point, it's starting to be a higher, more of my yearly income comes from event production. So I'm more professional than not, I guess. But yeah, I like the open spaces and I like working hard. Tree planting is a meditation. It's a dance. It teaches you about the power of your own mind. It teaches you about nutrition and how to sort of tend to your own wounds. Like any good warrior knows how to tend to their wounds. Even if you were the best swordsman across the land back in the day, if you didn't know how to tend to that like wound on your foot, you would just die in the march to the next war. Like there's no glory there. Everyone knows. So certain things about that type of job where you learn to tend to your wounds, and definitely had a lot of energy and aggression, and planting is one of those things that you can do fucking harder than anything else. And the product of your aggression, or of that energy that needs to come out, is just a forest is behind you and a paycheck. Wow. So it seemed to always make sense for me. And I'm a morning person, so you actually got me at like a less alert time of the day for me. But I'm up at 5-6 a.m. and I just have always been a morning person, so it lends well to that as well. Yeah, just the wide open spaces and the freedom that it's always brought me to have lots of time off in the off season.
I love that. That's awesome. I definitely, I worked in the park system for a while, provincial park system back in Ontario. I'm from Ontario, and so I did some tree planting, not like the hardcore tree planting like it is out. It's not as. I mean, it's pretty rugged back there too, but yeah, it's definitely some of the hardest work I've done in the past.
Yeah, it's a pick your poison, right? Like if you're back east, or if you're in northern Alberta, you got the heat and the bugs and the long days. If you're on the coast in the spring, you got the rain and the darkness. It's like it's a pick your pain kind of thing. It might be more rugged on the coast and more wet and more difficult, but you deal with another different set of pains anywhere you go in that industry. So maybe being a little bit sadistic kind of helps when you're a tree planter.
Now let's talk a little bit about DJ life. So you DJ under Mount Elia, but you're also part of like the Naked DJs. That's right.
Yep.
Talk about a little bit of the evolution of your DJ career in all of this.
When I think about it, I guess like I grew up on Cortez, and like my mother was a belly dancer and loved reggae music and Eastern music, and my old man was like Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and I grew up, the Gorge Hall and Whaletown used to have, couple decades of really good music, like from, you get the jam band type stuff and the African influence, Afro rock and whatnot, and a lot of the masters and musical masters that found their way at Hollyhock over the years, and the influence they had that penetrated the island, a very musical place. So my rebellion was techno. When I discovered banging German acid techno, late 90s. We were heavily influenced by a crew who came over from Vancouver, who were connected with an older fellow who was a little bit older than me, and they started doing these little events down in Carrington Bay, and their crew was very, like I said, like banging hard techno, which is probably and acid music of the late 90s, but ultimately the style of music was quite not musical, and I think that was a big sort of rebellion. It was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like, yeah, my parents are going to hate this. You know, just going for it, right? And then, so it was heavily influenced by that over the years, and early Shambhala visits in the first 5-6 years of Shambhala and things of that nature. And Moon Tribe was a group that kind of frequented here and there in the late 90s and had a little bit of a ripple effect on Vancouver Island. Hornby did some stuff, and I think that was a big part of it. And we followed along on that train for a while. And as DJing started to become digital and final scratch and vinyl control, digital control with vinyl, or vinyl control on digital music, suddenly my whole music collection I could DJ. It wasn't just the techno and the breaks and the whatever I'd find at the record store. Suddenly all of the music that I grew up with, everything was at my disposal. And as DJing became digital, I followed along with that vinyl control until they went from Firewire, and then Serato came out with better USB connections, and then I jumped on the controller train because we did a lot of events in natural environments, on sailboats, on the tops of mountains, in weird cabins that are shaking, and controllers just could hold up better than turntables. So I drifted away from vinyl control, just mostly due to like logistical needs, just that the controllers held up so better in all these adverse environments. We do many years of random acts of musical terrorism, we would call it. We just, set up pop-up parties all over the place. So yeah, nice. I lived in a house with 3 buddies of mine that I grew up with, Mike O'Donnell and Justin Stern. And actually, Justin passed away last year, so rest in peace, my brother. And we DJed together for years. Justin as well. We tree planted for years together as well. So the 3 of us formed a group. And we actually, we all lived in the same house, and for reasons we won't get into on here, we had been going to court we were actually in Supreme Court, and that would maybe be a story for another podcast, but we couldn't leave. So, we couldn't leave the country. So we decided we'd move to Comox Valley to snowboard, and there's no snow that year. So we just DJ'd and started throwing parties because there's nothing else to do. And that was sort of the beginning of our promoting out of the Comox Valley, was basically due to being stuck there and then having no snow. Wow. And so the 3 of us DJ'd around lots for a lot of years, and some lights on here. And it's a great collaborating with your friends, lifelong friends, and it's nice messing around with a duo or a trio. You can always go and take a pee mid-set, and you botch one mix here and there, and your buddy's there to pick it up behind you, kind of thing, right? So we always had a lot of fun as a naked DJs, and I definitely look back at that time as fondly.
Yeah. I used to DJ a lot with my buddy Rowan, and we used to, back when I was DJ DeSunos, we'd be R&D, and man, it was. I remember this one time, like when made the switch to digital, and I'd been running the same Mac for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and I got the blue screen of death. It was like my hard drive was done, and it, like, if Rowan wasn't there, I would have been fucked, But then that was interesting twist of turn where I started doing more vocals and instrumentations and stuff, because it took me a while to be able to afford a new Mac at that time. And so it was like, well, I still want to play. We got all these gigs. Okay, so I'm going to just go and so I just started jamming on top of whatever beats he would come up with, and it kind of ended up being, we didn't go that far with it, but that collaboration, and even when we were tag setting, right? Like when you're going 2 for 2 or 3 for 3, what do you want to do? It's like this. And again, this slightly competitive edge, but not too competitive. You're more
Yep.
excited that you're both trying to play like the best tracks you have. And
Yeah, no, definitely played off each other, and we would just dig hard. And if we dug into a vein that the other two hadn't quite found, and it was a good one, it was like that. Okay, check this out, boys. And if it was one of those, oh, it's good,
yeah,
the other two kind of have to hold off for at least few
yeah,
months. The other
yeah,
one was until at one point the artist becomes so part of that trio that now anyone can kind of play it, but you have that nice little grace period where you're not playing those fresh tracks that your buddy just. So we would go hard, we would search and search, and
right,
obviously camaraderie was the key, but that nice little bit of competition in there gets you grinding out those, digging it
yeah,
extra hard for those extra little gems, and hoping you can find that just one that's just going to floor your buddies when you drop it.
yeah, yeah. I know, and because we used to share a lot of tracks, right? We'd share a certain amount, but then there would be always like, no, 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 I'm not sharing that track with them. I'm sorry, buddy, you can't have that track. You really can't have that track. And it'd be like, he'd be like looking at what the track is. I mean, that was the other difference, right? Like with controllerism and laptops, it's like, oh, you can just look at the screen and see exactly what you're playing. But with like CD DJs or with records, it's like, no, you can't tell I mean, the modern CDJs have the track titles, but I had 850s, and it was
No, you
like,
really had to be a lurker back in the day to really figure out what the songs
yeah,
were. You really had to be lurking back there. You couldn't just Shazam it or Google it from the
yeah,
back of the room for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
No, I know. It's funny how, like, I know I got a new Google phone, I don't know, whatever, 6 months ago, and it just came with like its own version of Shazam, and I just look at my phone and it's like, oh, that's what that track is. Okay, I can save them on a playlist, and I'm like, okay, this is crazy,
Pretty easy
awesome.
now. Yeah,
Yeah, I
straight to
know.
the
It's super.
Spotify playlist and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a different world. It's much more like open. And then, obviously the sync button. I don't know. I brought this up. I'm probably going to bring it up in every. It's like the sync button has made everybody a fucking DJ.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
It is.
definitely it was interesting as it came in, and I mean the only like big justification I could really ever really see as like the most valid justification is if it's saving you some time, maybe you're doing
Yeah,
something else cool with that time you're saving,
yeah,
because it is
right.
a bit of a time saver. And
100%.
hopefully, and with buttons and controls and triggers and effects more accessible now on controllers, I think young DJs are using that extra time a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, and then I got no hate for it. I'm just like, man, you have no idea how hard DJing was. It was it's like, you have no idea how fucking hard it was. Because even the early CDJs, like, they didn't, the way they read the tracks was not accurate. They were not
No,
accurate.
no,
It was
it's
like,
really been just this last not too long where they've really now it's just that is definitely it now, the CDJ,
yeah,
like
yeah,
very hard
yeah.
to compete
No,
with
they've
with the
nailed.
modern CDJ now.
Yeah, they've nailed it. Yeah, they've really nailed it. It's great, actually. And it does, you're right. It does, if you can spend more time making the track sound good, playing with effects, remixing in beats, for like maybe a slightly more advanced DJ, and curating your music better, and not like getting stressed out about like, what you got to do to line up the track right and da 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 da. da. It certainly can make for a more uh, you know, even musical experience for the audience as well.
And I mean, I guess a similar argument can be made for sync as can for electronic music production. Certainly before live instrumentation was so easy to interface, where you know electronic music has opened up the court for non-rhythmic people to be able to make very rhythmic music, because not
Yeah.
everyone necessarily, I mean, you can practice, but not everyone, there is built-in rhythm, there's practice,
Hmm.
but then there's also physicality. Like, you may not have all the limbs to be a drummer, or you may not have the stamina, or you may not, so I think
Yeah.
a similar argument for AI or for any automation or any mechanical automation, a calculator for that. It's just, it allows, it allows someone who may not have been technically or physically able to do it, more able to do it. It's
Yeah.
sort of like telling an AI to code something for you. You don't have to code. You just have to, now you can speak to it in plain language. So like dum-dums like me who aren't technical or can't speak in mathematics, I can now speak plainly to some AI, and it can give me this technical schematic. Like, it actually evens the playing field in a sense. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, because some people might not physically have those abilities. Say they have technical abilities. So yeah, I think that a similar argument can be made for sync as that. It's like someone who maybe not as rhythmic can now take rhythmic music and spend more time in other creative ways than being bogged down by their rhythm.
Right. No, that's great. I love that. That's a really good point. Didn't really think about it that much. Yeah, so I think we're getting close to the end here, Ben. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show. And yeah, so you got some dates coming up. You want to spit out some websites that people can check out what you're up to,
Sure.
and and then I'll close it out after that.
Yeah, well, obviously, thanks for chatting with me. I've always appreciated you, and when you mentioned you were doing this, I was happy to chat. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on here and thinking that what I'm doing is interesting enough to be on here. So I appreciate that, and it's an honor. So thank you. And yeah, definitely hope to see folks coming out this year for Cumberland Wild. www.cumberlandwild.com. Lots of ticket info there. Um, and I would say, the normal stuff. Always nice to jump on, get some more followers on the Instagrams and so at Pachena Bay Music Festival, at Cumberland Wild. You can find some nice stuff there. Probably be rolling out some nice videos from Pachena Bay pretty soon. And also, if you jump on to the Pachena website at www.pachenabaymusicfestival.com, you can click down. There's a option to sign up for. I have a direct text list. So I send, for folks that don't want to be on social media, or aren't on social media, I send one text per show. So it ends up being about 30 or 30 so texts a year. And it's just like show, date, ticket link. There's no added promo. There's no hard sell. There's no upsell. There's just, here's this. And it's always at least 48 hours released, 48 hours before social media. So you don't need to feel like you need to be on there, and you don't end up getting some of my shows will sell out really quickly. So it's a good way to be able to really get the information in your hand and have a head start on social media. I wanted to really do it like that because I don't morally or ethically feel good about being someone that's causing people to feel like they need to stay on social media if they don't want to be. So that's a great option for folks to go through that portal that way. And also, I am doing mostly private Facebook groups for Cumberland Wild and for Pachena Bay. Event pages are a cesspool full of scam bots and nonsense. So
Yeah.
searching for the private groups, that's where you want to be. That's where you can talk to other humans, where you can sell a ticket or buy a ticket in relatively knowing that it's not some account from somewhere else. And yeah, I think that's it, man.
That's great. Well, I feel, and this might be like a little sidebar, but yeah, platform politics or platform consumerism slash capitalism It's real. It's very real, and it seems like a lot of the platforms started off innocent enough, and were very useful tools. And I agree with you. I think we got to get people just like on the dance floor and offline. And I'm gonna try and cultivate a similar thing. It's gonna be an email list, and it's just gonna be, yo, these are the shows that are happening. I signed up for your text, so I'm looking forward to your first text. I haven't gotten a text from you yet, but I don't know when the
Nice.
next show is. But I'm looking forward to. I like that. It would be like sometime in the middle of the day, just get a text being like, "There's this show."
Yeah, it's simple, right? As long as it's not in your inbox too invasive, like, trying to upsell you on some add-on nonsense, right? Then we don't want that
Yeah,
in our faces like that. And
yeah,
yeah, for sure, man.
I agree. Well, thanks again, Ben. Yep. So you've been here with Benjamin Howells. He's producing Cumberland Wild and also Pachena Bay, and also lots of shows at the Waverly in Cumberland. So if you're Mid-Island, Vancouver Island in British Columbia, check out what he's up to, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Right on. Thanks. Much love, everybody.